I promised I'd tell you. Okay, so he brought it up. Advances. All right. So one of the big reasons to go over here is the advance. The advance is money against future earnings. All right. So this is not money you ever have to pay back unless you fail to deliver the book. If you're in breach of contract, you will. If you're not in breach of contract, even if you don't sell really well, even if the book kind of flops, the money is yours. It is the publisher saying, we believe that we are going, that you are worth this investment. It is us saying, you have done all this work. We acknowledge that. We are going to pay you for all that work you did up front. And it's also kind of the mark of this is how much we're investing in this book. This is what we believe, how much we believe in this book. And so getting a good advance can really give you a leg up. One of the problems is advance then becomes your metric. And if you get an enormous advance and then don't sell very well, that can be disastrous for you. Whereas if you sold the same amount but got an advance that was equal to what you sold, then that book is considered a success. Because it's not if they broke even. You got to remember, the advance is not about them breaking even. It's about expectations. Let's break this down. Okay, you guys all have this right here. Let's start breaking this down. So, hardcover book, okay? New book, new author. I'm going to guess $25. Okay? That's what Elantris was, and they actually kind of try and stay at that. That's a good price point for a new author. Right off the bat, someone get out a calculator, by the way. Right off the bat, usually we're just going to guess 45% goes to the bookseller. It may be closer to 40. Let's just go ahead and do 42 as a guesstimate because they've all got their negotiated things. So what's 42% of $25? Oh, 10.5. Okay, that's good. So we've got 10.5 bucks. That worked out really well. Goes to the retailer. This is a hardcover. Okay. So retail. So afterwards we have $14.50 left. All right. As an author, you make it off of on the book. You make off of cover price, regardless of how it's sold. Most of them are discounted, but that's just how it is. So you get 10% as cover for a new author. Generally, the way this is going to work, I've found, at least in adult, it's a little bit different in children's, but in adult, you're getting 10% on the first 5,000 books, 12.5% on the next 5,000, and 15% thereafter. All right? So you are making, off of this, you are making $250. All right? Everyone's got that. It's going to run in my calculation. So I'm going to.
That's just the average.
No, that one's actually pretty set.
I think that's the average after, because you say you get 10%.
10% off of 25.
So we're saying.
If you sell more, then it will go up.
I've got you. Okay.
Yep. If you when you sell that 5,000 in first copy, that one you'll get 12.5% for. All the first 5,000, you still have only gotten 10%. Okay. And so you make $250. All right. So out of that $250, out of that we have $12 left, right? So I'm going to erase this little guy just. So, well, that math turned out really clean. So $12 left. And the $12 per book is what the publisher is spending on this stuff over here, right? All of this stuff, okay? Plus, their all their overhead, like, their rent and things like that. And that's just how a book is breaking down. Now, what you've got to realize is, even if, most new authors are considered, they're not going to be profitable. Because all of this stuff, having a whole department for all this and a legal team and all these things, they say that the new authors, no matter, unless you're selling over 10,000 copies in hardcover, you're basically going to be in the red for the publisher. It's about that 10,000 copies that they start actually making money off of you. And really, it's not very much. It's when you start really becoming a bestseller that you pay for everything. Authors like myself, of which there are a handful at Tor, probably pay 70 to 80% of its costs. Would be my guess. But what you can see here is you can get an advance that, even if you earn out your advance, is still not a profitable book for the publisher. But the idea is that they're growing an author name. And the whole point of this was, the idea, it's a perception of, with a new book like this, did it fail or did it succeed? Well, if you got an advance of $40,000 and you sold 2,000 copies in hardcover and then, 5,000 in paperback, that's not a success. Even though, even if you'd broken even on your advance, if you broke even on your advance, it would have been a success, even though the book is still not quite profitable for the publisher. The expectations were met. And there's this sense that the book did very well. Does that make sense to you guys, how it can be a book that doesn't make money for the publisher but still a success?
Because it sounds like they're investing in you as an author
yes.
with the hope that you'll make more books and that more
right. The big thing about writing is you got to understand we are the talent. In Hollywood, people go to see movies, generally, the talent or the actors or the director sometimes who will draw the crowd. In books, it's us. Our name is what draws the crowd. In fact, if you want to watch an author's career and see how they're doing, go line up all their books. Do this with my book sometime. It's kind of fun. If you got the hardcovers, line them all up in order from Elantris to Way of Kings and watch the size of the name. All right? On Elantris, it's like that. Get out that Way of Kings book again. Hold that up. All right? All right? All right? Then go, yeah, it got a little bit bigger on the paperback. The hardcovers, it was a little, but it's not bad there. Go look at a John Grisham book or something like that sometime. Or Stephen King. And it's even bigger, right? Because the author becomes the brand name. So they are investing in you as an author, okay?
Generally speaking, are you going to be meeting your advance?
The hope is that yes, a normal thing is the publisher's goal is to give, like everyone kind of wants you to earn out the advance in basically like 2 or 3 years. That's the ideal. Meaning the hardcover and then when it's a frontless paperback. And then all the paperback sales after that are just royalty checks and things like that. That's the thing you want to do. I have yet to not earn out an advance in 1 week. That means that you're doing really well. I'll give you that. What's that? Elantris, I got 10,000, and no, probably wasn't in 1 week, but it did earn out pretty quickly because it was $10,000. We sold 10,000 hardcovers, and so on that we were up to 25K plus the extra 2.5%. So it's like 30K off the hardcover. And most of those sales are in the first 4 months, is when you sell your hardcovers. So yeah, probably not the first week on that, but basically everything else since Elantris and the First Mistborn. And that's actually not uncommon for the new author because as a new author, you're not an established thing yet. And so they can lowball you. They can expect to sell a certain number and lowball you because you don't have as much bargaining grounds. Go read Scalzi's article that he posted a few days back, though, on your bargaining power as a writer, even without anything published. It was a really good piece. It was published. He did it on his blog like a couple days ago.
With these percentages that we're talking about, do you get paid quarterly?
You get paid semi-annually.
Okay, semi-annually.
Let's put that up right here under self-publishing. Immediate.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
I like a bit of a Freudian slip there.
Immediate payment. You get paid like every month or like every couple weeks or something over here, which is pretty cool. And the other thing is that publishers do is they'll do something called a reserve against returns. Books are returnable. Do you know what this means?
You can read them and take them back.
No, you shouldn't be doing that.
You shouldn't be.
Yeah. Returnable means that if the bookstore orders 10 copies and they sell 2, they can send the other 8 back for refunding credit to the publisher. Okay? This was started during the Great Depression in order to get bookstores to take a chance on new writers because they weren't willing to. And it has been grandfathered in ever since. And so The thing about that is you send out all these books. They don't usually get returned until after 4 or 5 months. And so let's say you publish in October. Your first royalty statement you get then for October through January 1st. It comes to you in about April. And in that royalty statement it says, we shipped out 10,000 hardcovers. You are owed $30,000, but we're keeping that all in case they all come back. Right? Because they all could come back. And the next time it comes around, they're like, all right, we got this many back. These many are still out there, and we've got confirmed sales from the book scan reports of this many. We're paying you 10,000 of that, and 10,000 vanished because you got returns. We're keeping the other 10,000 just in case every other book comes back. And then you argue with them and say, no, every other book's not going to come back. And they're like, all right, fine, here's a little extra or something. It sometimes can be an argument of getting your reserve against returns, things like that. So that's another little thing that's in there that makes this, that is a cool thing about the self-publishing.
In connection with the advancement, you're basically drawing on funds that you haven't yet made, right?
Yeah, let's make that absolutely clear. If you got a 10K advance, then each copy of this is earning up toward that, and you don't get any royalties till you've earned that back. Okay? It's called an advance for that reason. You have to earn it back to see anything more. You don't have to pay it back if you flop, but you do have to, you don't see any royalties. So in this case, until you get into that, if you sell 1,000 books at $250, you're at $2,000. You're not going to make it. You got to get to like that 5,000 mark in hardcover before you would start making back on that. And we haven't done paperbacks yet. Paperbacks, it depends on your genre, how big a deal paperbacks are. Epic fantasy tends to be hardcover driven, but military science fiction tends to be paperback driven. And so they'll do a big blitz with a lot of paperbacks. And on that, you're getting a much smaller percentage. Paperbacks are generally, I don't know if you know this, but it's cheaper for the publisher to print another one and ship it to a bookstore than it is to pay the shipping to get it back if they haven't sold it. So they return paperbacks by ripping the covers off and pulping the paperback and sending the cover back to get their refund, because paperbacks are, the shipping is more expensive than a lot of the stuff. And you look at this $12, or on the paperback it'll be like like $4. It costs like a buck to ship these things. Paperback, it costs like 50 cents to ship it, and it costs about 50 cents to print one. And so, getting it shipped back, it's going to be beat up. You may not be able to send it back anyway. It's just cheaper to print another one and send it. You're horrified. I'm sorry. Yeah.
So my family went to a used bookstore once, and they had a whole shelf of books without covers.
Yep.
What does that mean?
That means that they were stripped and stolen. In fact, a lot of paperbacks you'll see on the front saying, the front page, don't buy this if it is coverless. It means that they sent it back for a refund and then probably gave it, they're like offloaded it. It may not be that store. Does that make sense? Like an employee probably at a Barnes & Noble took all those and went and sold them for like 10 cents a piece to the used bookstore or something like that. So an employee stole those books.
Okay.
Probably. Would be my guess. So yeah. All right. So you're going to have a decision to make.
While we're on advances,
Yeah.
if I may. So is there really much of a problem of getting a small advance if in the end
Here, I'm
the
gonna give
book
you
is
one of these.
successful?
No, you will make the same amount of money.
You just don't get it up front.
But you don't get upfront, and you don't get this sort of vote of confidence, which is why a lot of people suggest push for big advances because of the vote of confidence.
They're invested.
Mm-hmm. And even $10,000 is a decent enough mark of investment from the publisher that, the average advance, they say, Toby Buckle did a survey, and I think the average advance was $6,500 for a new author breaking in.
So you say push for a higher advance. Is there
Yep.
some kind of technique?
There is a technique. The technique is to have a book that goes hot. This is very hard to do without an agent. One of the things that agents are very good at doing, we'll probably talk agents in depth on another day, okay? So hold your questions about agents, because I want to kind of go over contracts and publishing today, and then we'll talk about agents on another week. But what an agent can do, the agent's job is to go and know all the publishers, know all the editors, be frequently having, like meetings or lunches or things with them, know them by name, know what they're publishing, and be able to go to them with a book and say, this book is awesome, it's super hot, you all should look at it, we're going to hold an auction on it, and the highest bidder is going to earn it. This is what we did on Steelheart. We took it out and we went to, we went to 12 publishers, and we got like 8 of them bidding on it, and 4 ended up in the bid at the end. And finally, we chose one of those at the end of the day. And that drives the bid. The bidding for a book drives it higher. Of course, you always have the possibility that if you do that, you'll send it to them, and nobody will think it's any good, and nobody will bid on it, and then it'll become a pariah, right? That nobody wants to pick up, because this is the book that had a failed auction that flopped.
So that's why when you rely on your agents.
The agents, yeah, you probably, if you have a good agent, there's a lot of bad ones. We'll talk about that on the agent week. If you have a good agent, they'll say, what they'll probably do is they'll send it to a bunch of publishers and not say they're going to do an auction. And then if 2 or 3 of those get back and are interested, then the agent will play them off of each other and kind of have an informal auction. Where they're like, Harper is offering this much on it, and our client is really interested in being with them. You've got to come back with something if you want this book to really, get them excited and start these things going, and then it can actually turn into a full auction. Terry Goodkind famously had a big auction. His agent was Russ Galen, a very good agent, was able to get Wizard's First Rule at $750,000 for 3 books in 1994, $750. So it's $250 per book for a first-time author. That's the sort of thing that can happen. Whenever you hear of like some enormous advance, either that author is a super huge brand name already, or it was an auction where a wily agent was able to play a bunch of publishers off each other and get the advance up high. I actually forbid my agent from taking Elantris to anyone else. I sold Elantris without an agent. I sent to an editor, and we'll probably spend the next amount of time talking about how you do that. And got an editor interested, called an agent that I liked, and said, will you handle negotiations? He said, yes. He read the book, he liked it, he said, we should take this to other places, but I wanted to be with Tor. I really liked Tor as a publisher. I was a big Wheel of Time fan. And I said, if I'm writing epic fantasy, I want to be with Tor. And so we didn't take it anywhere else. And he probably could have gotten that up more by doing that. It was just a call I made. They were offering, we got it to $10,000. I felt that was just fine and legit. My agent didn't think it was a bad advance. If he would have gotten it up, he probably feels he could have gotten it up to like 20, which is about, what it earned off the hardcover run, which would have been a reasonable advance. But I wanted to be with Tor. Even knowing their foibles, which is that their editors are often late. They're not good at contacting you all the time. Things get lost in the shuffle. If you send to Tor, you've got to know that it can be mass chaos. And for some writers, that's not a good place to be. I like the idea of having a lot of more control, even though being with a major publisher, and being able to do things like, hey, I'm going to do all this art for Way of Kings. Let's put it in. A lot of publishers would go into conniptions when you told them you're going to do that, because they would want to be doing that. So,
with successive works, are you contractually or otherwise obligated to remain with Tor?
Good question. They usually most contracts will have what we call a right of first refusal, which means that you have to show the book to them first, and then they have an option to they'll make an offer on it, and then you can then go somewhere else. But I believe contractually you can't take less from someone else. Does that make sense? That's what a right of first refusal. The more popular you get, the more your right of first refusal will get narrowed down. For instance, Tor has right of first refusal on my next Stormlight book. Does that make sense? like you narrow it down to series. A lot of authors will, and it's pretty easy to get a negotiator early on to say, hey, I want to write children's and adult. Can we put our right of first refusal to adult only because I want to write children's books also and be able to go different places. Usually they'll bend very easily on that. If they get right of first refusal on the next book that's like the one they're buying, then they'll be fine.
How does publishing with multiple different publishers affect your relationship with your main publisher?
That's going to be a matter of opinion depending on authors. Some authors never do it, some authors do. I have enjoyed being with Tor a lot, but I've also wanted to see what the experience was like with other publishers, so I've taken my children's books generally to other publishers. It's not a vote of disconfidence. It's not a vote of disconfidence or of no confidence. Yeah, to Tor. Tor is fantastic. But I like knowing the business, and I like knowing what it feels like to be with different people and things like that. So, all right. So, while we're on it, let's talk a little bit about your contract terms for when you get a contract, and we will talk about breaking in. That's probably more important, but we're already on this. All right.